In a massive overnight strike, Russia has launched 88 drones across Ukraine, while the Ukrainian air defenses said that they shot down about 56 of the drones. 3 people were injured in the strikes in the capital. The fires engulfed the warehouses and commercial buildings in Kyiv, sending plumes of smoke into the night sky as air defense tracers lit up the horizon. And Ukraine has said that 24 drones were jammed and diverted using electronic warfare. Much damage has been reported across the 5 regions in central, eastern and southern Ukraine. The strike came even as the US envoy Steve Witkoff was holding talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin in St. Petersburg. Ahead of the 4.5-hour discussions, the US President Donald Trump had called for an immediate end to what he called a senseless war. The reports, however, claimed that Witkoff has suggested concessions that include US backing Russia's claim to 4 occupied Ukrainian regions. That is Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson. Now, Witkoff had earlier been criticized for what has been termed as repeating Russian propaganda lines and failing to even name the regions in the controversial interview last month. Now, President Zelensky, on his part, has accused Russia of pulling China into the war, claiming that hundreds of Chinese nationals are fighting alongside the Russian troops. So far, Russia and the United States have held 3 rounds of talks without any breakthrough so far. All right, now to give us more perspective on this, we're joined on this broadcast by Ms. Alina Trijub, who's the Secretary General of the Independent Defence Anti-Corruption Committee. Now, Ms. Trijub, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. Now, there are reports that say that Witkoff has proposed giving up Russia's ownership of 4 Ukrainian regions. What does it mean? Are the Americans now suggesting that the Ukrainians should cede this territory?
Well, this is not really important in my opinion, because Witkoff already, we have seen he's just telling Trump, and he's telling the public what Putin wants to tell. So Putin said that there were referendums. Witkoff repeated this. Putin said that everybody in those regions wants to live in Russia, and Witkoff repeated this. Putin said that he wants this for regions, and then maybe he'll consider ceasefire, and Witkoff repeated this. However, I think even Donald Trump realizes himself right now that Putin is not really willing to have any ceasefire. He said himself that they are bombing Ukraine like crazy. You mentioned yourself, indeed, there were attacks on Kyiv this night and before, and now there are reports by Ukrainian Ministry for Interior Affairs that those drones started using essentially explosive devices similar to cluster munitions, dropping mines that could kill civilians hours after the drone itself explodes, which is obviously war crime and terrorism, because it has zero military purpose. It's just to terrorize civilians. President Zelensky just visited the site where Russia killed 9 children by ballistic missile on a playground in Kyiv. So we don't see any signs of ceasefire. And definitely, it's absolutely not true that when Witkoff says that if Ukraine gives away 4 regions, there will be a ceasefire. And I think Trump fully understands it at this point.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that if Ukraine were to cede those territories to Russia, you say that there still will not be ceasefire. Now, according to reports that are coming in, Ukraine is moving towards the indigenization of the production of its weapons. It is relying increasingly on the backing of the Europeans, and also there is a lot of ill feeling about this proposed minerals deal that Donald Trump has put forth now, where Ukraine effectively has to give up all of its profits for any minerals that are extracted from Ukraine. How do the people in Ukraine feel about the manner in which Donald Trump has conducted these peace deal negotiations so far? And do you think the people in Ukraine would want to rely on the United States as a reliable partner?
Obviously, this is something very upsetting for Ukrainian people to see that when one big empire Russia wanted to invade Ukraine with force, killing our kids. Trump started to behave as if he is another big empire who wants some minerals from Ukraine, and he doesn't feel any moral obligation to help defend Ukraine because we were American ally and we were attacked by aggressive regime, and we need support from our allies. So of course it's upsetting. However, Ukrainians, like you said, they rely on themselves a lot. This is our country, and of course nobody will allow to trade any territories of our country unless our people decide so. So that's why Ukrainian spirit is very strong, despite American rhetoric. Moreover, Europe supports Ukraine right now. And moreover, there is still hope that Trump will understand that he doesn't want to undermine his own image in the world, especially in the midst of those tariff wars that he started with China and other countries, showing that his even Russian regime doesn't even respect him, and doing all those explosions when Trump is trying to talk about peace.
All right, interesting. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Olena Trija, for joining us with our perspective there.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.